Bonjour tout le monde, ici c'est Catherine Housselin en direct de la préfabriquée numéro 6 au lycée Mount Vernon dans le Washington. Hi everyone, this is Catherine Housselin. I'm in my portable number 6 at Mount Vernon High School in Mount Vernon, Washington. I recently updated a post about my identity as what I consider a proficiency-based teacher, and there were some questions on like, how do you do this for, beyond level 2? And I said, okay, I'd like to show you a few things that we do from level 1 that help us get to AP so that we can have students who are going through the entire program in a proficiency-based manner. So I'm going to take you on a little tour today of the unit that I'm just finishing up with my level 3, level 4 students. Those are two different classes. One is the 4th year college in the high school, and one is the level 3 students. They're the same level of students. It's that some chose to take the college course and some chose to take the level 3 course. I do level it so that the college course is a little bit more rigorous, as we say, but and they do have to take some other options through the college and the high school. But basically, these kids have gone together from level 1, 2, and then they took a path to either level 4 or level 3. So I'm going to show you some of the wonderful things we're working on right now as we finish up in, wow, it's May. So I look tired. It's Monday. I've decided to do this just on this spur of the moment. Why not? I hope you enjoy. One of the questions I hear a lot about is, when do you introduce certain tenses? And I start at all levels, all tenses. So students in French 1 see and hear and interact with the present, the past, and the future. Even sometimes a little bit of those if phrases that are well known in Spanish and French and Italian. But I want to show you what I'm doing in level 2, since I don't teach level 1. And I like to bring in something right away. What did you do last weekend? And I have some cards for my students to help them talk. So these are scaffolding, these are conversation cards. And the students, after they've been working with this just for, I don't know, maybe a month, maybe 2 months, they're absolutely comfortable with talking about 3 ways to say the past. J'ai, je suis, et je me suis. So those are the 3 ways that we start the past in French. So usually they know the question, qu'est-ce que tu as fait ce week-end? And I chose some of the cards based on what they like to do, not on what I think they do, because teenagers' lives are much different than you would imagine. So those are some of our cards. I don't put all of them out because I don't have enough space, but there's the j'ai, suis. So we've got I went out, I stayed home, I came back, and the je me suis. So those are reflexive verbs that take a little bit more time for some of the students. And look, there's s'habiller, which evidently was on the AP test this year. Ha ha ha. So we use that, and the kids put out 2 or 3 of each color so that they see that each type of verb has a special way to start it. So we've got that. And then I have some other little conversation cards, and those are based on what the students tell me they do. Did you work? Where'd you go? Did you relax? Did you go out with friends? So we use those almost every Monday and Tuesday so the students have some talking time. And I have one more set I wanted to show you over here. You're going to see a lot today. After we've progressed from those cards, we've got the more advanced color-coded card, and we'll talk about why I color-code these. So again, we start out, est-ce que tu as? So we're just practicing, did you do this, did you do that? And that's just real basic yes, no type questions. So if it ends in a T, it's blue. If it ends in a U, try that again, ends in a U, it's yellow. If it ends in an accented E, or if it ends in an I, and I did even put a P in there, I know, you can call me out on that. So every Monday and Tuesday, the students start with these conversation cards. There's just a wide variety of them, and this way the students become more familiar and comfortable. Now, we don't go through all the different forms. You don't go over j'ai, tu as, il a. They just know how to talk about themselves in September, about themselves, and then slowly but surely we work in, okay, so you know how to say est-ce que tu as, est-ce que tu es, est-ce que tu t'es. So those are the 3 different styles that we have in French. And then we start saying he did it, she did it, il n'a pas, he didn't do it. And once you get in there, the kids after French 2 are really comfortable talking about I did it, you did it, he did it, she did it, and then we can move into next year and the years after that, they did it, we did it, etc. Okay, so those are some wonderful ways just to get the kids starting to talk about in the past tense. So I wanted to give you a quick tour of the room because it's a portable and everybody asks, how do you fit everything in there? And it's packed. It is packed to the rim. You can see everything's, it's May, so Let's just take a look and imagine that it's beautifully organized. So we have a door over there. That's the door we don't use. The tables are all set up kind of in a U form. Okay, then we have every bit of curriculum that I've ever written back there in those well-organized shoe boxes. And we've got games, we've got school supplies, everything the students need. And then, of course, our famous library. We've seen that in a previous video. It's funny, the last time I made a video, we were doing the same exact unit, so you can watch that. And this is this is our tech table where I have charging stations for the students. We have our iPads. We have the safe for the iPads and the iPad minis, my amazing scanner printer, and our Chromebook cart. So you can tell that it's well organized in September, and this is what it looks like in May. So to move on how we learn about using the past tense. Now, as I said, we don't give direct grammar instruction. We tell lots of stories, and I'll get to the story in just a moment, but after we've done a few movie talks and we've seen the tenses in different ways, we've read stories, we've watched stories, we've told basic little stories, then I need to start pushing the students towards knowing some other forms on how verbs change depending on the subject. So I have the verb avoir here. So those are the forms for the helper auxiliary verb in French. And then any card that's orange, it's going to end in, it's an ER verb, so the accented E shows that that's the past participle. So like parler, travailler, regarder, all of those are going to be orange. And so the students take these, and their first job is to match the orange to the orange so that they show that they understand the words. And I try and choose as many comprehensible words as they know. Some of them are new, and that's how they make themselves a little bit more advanced, by choosing. And then we have looked at some forms. They know est-ce que tu as and j'ai and il a. Okay, so then they're looking at nous avons, vous avez, so we're learning a little bit more. The green cards, they would do the same thing with. They would put the white cards in the middle. If it's an IR verb like grossir, guérir, nourrir, these are a little bit odd. Vomir is always one of my favorite. Okay, so those are green. And we'll talk about why I color code in a bit. And then if it is a U, so these are RE verbs like entendre, lire, voir, perdre. A few of these are irregular, and that's good, but they just know that they end in U. And if you notice, I kept the same color coding as the cards, our conversation cards that we have been using since the beginning of French 2. So here they are. They're green, yellow, orange, and then the blue are the irregular faire verbs. And the students, we work with a couple of different colors. We look at the different endings, and they start making inferences on, oh, it seems like if the verb ends in IR, what's it end with? So they can talk about themselves in the past. They can talk about their weekends or the vacation. But then, of course, we want to start giving them some rules, because there are some students who, and when we're getting to that intermediate mid, they can handle some rules. Okay? Next thing we're going to look at is a movie talk. A lot of teachers have used the present. It's a short animated clip about a boy and a puppy. If you haven't seen it or haven't used it, all of my materials are going to be available on the blog. But this is one of those that gets the kids crying. Okay, let's just put it out there. So at first, I have the video playing for the students. Okay, it's up there, and I do a whole regular movie talk. We stop it, we talk. Students are making good guesses. We're doing yes/no type questions. Movie talk. It's in the past tense. Well, then I have the screen captures printed out in color, and then I have some sentences. And the students, they've heard me use it. They've tried a few things. Now their job is to look at the picture and find the card, the sentence that goes with the screenshot. And if you notice, I've bolded the past tense. And if it's an être verb and it makes agreement in the past, then I've added that on there. It's underlined and it's bolded. So the students first put the pictures in order. There's no words. They don't even have the words yet. And then I go around and check those and make sure they're good. We go through the video again, just to make sure that they've chosen the correct pictures in the correct order. And then I give them the sentence strips, and they put those in order. Okay, so they do that. And I have it in two different packages because it is a longer story. So this is the first half of the story. They finish that part, and then, the conclusion of the story, the next day, the next class period, It's on this one, and that way I can know, how do I put this? I don't mix up the cards too often. Okay, so it's easy for me to organize those. After the students have become really proficient on telling the story, they're going to make their own screencastify of it. And we're using Screencastify Lite.
Christophe, Joël, Jules. Vidéo sur la sofa.
And so the students are just reading their strips.
Christine est rentrée à la maison.
Okay, and I'm listening to the pronunciation and I'm listening to them talk. Okay, and a lot of teachers have used the present. It's a short animated clip about a boy and a puppy. If you haven't seen it or haven't used it, all of my materials are going to be available on the blog, but this is one of those that gets the kids crying. Okay, let's just put it out there. So at first I have the video playing for the students. Okay, it's up there and I do a whole regular movie talk. We stop it, we talk. Students are making good guesses. We're doing yes, no type questions. Movie talk. It's in the past tense. Well, then I have the screen captures printed out in color, and then I have some sentences. And the students, they've heard me use it. They've tried a few things. Now their job is to look at the picture and find the card, the sentence that goes with the screenshot. And if you notice, I've bolded the past tense. And if it's an être verb and it makes agreement in the past, then I've added that on there. It's underlined and it's bolded. So the students first put the pictures in order. There's no words. They don't even have the words yet. And then I go around and check those and make sure they're good. We go through the video again, just to make sure that they've chosen the correct pictures in the correct order. And then I give them the sentence strips. And they put those in order. Okay, so they do that. And I have it in two different packages because it is a longer story. So this is the first half of the story. They finish that part, and then, the conclusion of the story, the next day, the next class period, it's on this one. And that way I can know, how do I put this? I don't mix up the cards too often. Okay, so it's easy for me to organize those. After the students have become really proficient on telling the story, they're going to make their own screencastify of it. And we're using Screencastify Lite.
Christophe, Joël, Jules. Vidéo sur la sofa.
And so the students are just reading their strips.
Christine est rentrée à la maison.
Okay, and I'm listening to the pronunciation and I'm listening to them talk. Okay, and I'll stop that one. Doing those movie talks with the sentence strips really does reinforce the idea of when I make the past tense, I have to use two verbs. Both parts of the verb are there. I've got some vocabulary things we pass out. They do work on changing the verbs. But again, it's not a lot of just direct grammar for all the different forms. Right now we're just staying with the he, she form. And I believe I have one or two plural. So for example, ils sont sortis ensemble. They went out together. And so they do say that. And I can do this in French 2. I can do it in French 3. I have a more advanced version of this story for level 3 and level 4 if I don't get to it in level 2. It's a flexible story so that you can put that in any level that you want. At the level 3 and 4, I use emotions, so I would say il était fâché quand il a vu la patte déformée. So he was mad when. So I'm using the imperfect he was and then a past action. And that's a great way to set up the students for using those two tenses together. To help reinforce that, I've got some emotional cards. The students learn a lot of wonderful emotions in our class. So I was hurt, I was humiliated. So I try and pick some that are comprehensible, so they're cognates. So we have masculine cards and feminine cards. The students pick based on what they want to use. So they have all of those emotions. We go through pictures, we draw, we've got a bunch of pictures kids have taken that show them looking like this. Great stuff for the kids to go out and take pictures on campus. Always something to look back on after 2 or 3 years of French. And then I have a bunch of these orange cards that are just random things that can happen to people. Like I drank a disgusting liquid. I got sick during my vacation. I stayed home on the sofa all weekend. I just chose just really random things, but I put them already conjugated. So then the students would say, I was amazed when, or they can change it to because, I was amazed because, donc j'étais étonné parce que, and then they would say like, I found $20 on the street. So they're using the imperfect tense with the past tense, with the preterite. That helps out. The students are, in even level 2, able to say, I was mad because I fell down. I mean, that's already a really advanced level structure, but we're not asking the kids to explain all the different rules. It's a great way to infuse a bit of grammar. If you want to see more of the past tense narrations that my students make, they get to choose their own clip at one point, because we've done several of these guided movie talks and narrations with Screencastify, and then I say, okay, choose a clip, make it short so you see that these are pretty short. Write the script, and I want real basic sentences. I want it, he was mad when, he was happy because, and the students have recorded these and we put them on YouTube. And if you want to take a look at them, our channel is MVHS Français, and I'll put that link in the blog. All of this practice since French 2 leads us to one of our, most exciting units, I guess. We're looking at Raconte-moi une histoire, tell me a story. And like I said, I use this for level 3 and level 4, and we're going to be using a wonderful story from the Middle Ages that was written by Marie de France to tell the story. So all of this practice with the past tense, it actually has a purpose, because in French 3 and French 4, we tell a medieval story. We tell it with some pictures. And raconte-moi une histoire, so tell me a story, but also let's look at history, if you look at the double meaning of that word. And basically the students are going to take a trip into the past. And we just wanted to give some essential questions. So why do we study people from the past? Why do we study historical events? How does it help us understand history better? What was it like to live in the Middle Ages for different social classes? How is life different in the Middle Ages from today's? And then how do historic events affect daily life in France and in the world? Those are big questions. I like to choose those larger questions, and you see that there's really no grammar in there. Until you turn it around, there's our can-do statements. So I can describe and discuss daily life in the Middle Ages. I can compare and contrast modern life with Middle Ages. That's a little bit more logical. I can seek and identify information about the life in Middle Ages. I can describe historic events and people. I can retell the basics of a poem from the Middle Ages, and I can present a short fable or poem to my peers. So these are just wonderful things for students to know ahead of time that they're going to be doing. And our big deal is I can narrate in the past using the appropriate past tenses. That's our overarching goal. So I'm just going to show you like this table. We've got a lot of materials here. The story we're going to be telling is called Fresnes, and it was written by Marie de France. She was not writing in French, but this is Old French. We're talking about the 1100s, and we'll get into her later. We've got the books that I wrote, that I simplified, the adventures the students go on, and then we get into history by living in a castle. And we've got all the books that the students are going to use as sort of, what do we call that, first authentic resources. There's a name that social studies teachers use. So all these books I've purchased while I've been on my trips. I'll try to keep the glare off of this. So the story was written, as I said, by Marie de France, and I've taken it and simplified it. I read it in my graduate studies in Old French way back in the day, and I liked it so much because it's kind of it's like a telenovela. It's like a chisme story. It's got some good, what we're going to call it, like slanderous, scandalous stories. If you get a chance to read the original story, it's fun, but I've taken it and made it easier for kids to understand. So I had a student back in 2001, 2002, was an amazing artist, and she loved this story, so she said she would draw it out for me. So we have two knights that live in castles that are nearby each other, and the first knight, his wife has fraternal twins, so non-identical, and he sends his messenger out, and the messenger goes to the next castle, and the wife says, oh, she had fraternal twins. Well, that's pretty scandalous, because it means that she probably had two partners. And there's where the kids get scandalized. But then she herself, when she gets pregnant, she has fraternal girls. And my student drew that by making one blonde and one brunette. And her first idea is, well, I'm going to need to kill a baby. And her servant says, let's have another option. And so they wrap the baby in a special blanket covered with the design, and they put a ring around her neck. The servant takes her to a convent and drops her under a tree, which is called a frêne. And so that's where she gets her name. The abbess, or the nun that finds her, names her after the tree that she found her in. The young woman grows up into a beautiful young woman, and she has many courtly love experiences, but one man in particular falls in love with her. And they go to his place, his castle, and live for a while without being married, and that really doesn't appeal to the young knight's family. So he says, you must go get another bride. The bride shows up, and as Fren is helping prepare the marriage bed, the young woman and her mother see the special cover that's on the bed and ask her where she got it. And then all the truth does come out. The mother is forced to admit what she had done by abandoning a baby. And she says, you're my daughter. This is your sister. So this young coudrier, she divorces from the nice, wonderful chevalier, the knight. And then Fren and Gourin can get married. So there's some steps to preparing the students to be able to tell the story. First of all, we need to learn the vocabulary. So before I give them the actual vocabulary sheet, I have prepared specific words that I want to concentrate on. So we're looking at past tense verbs, but we're also looking at a few other words. And I always like to choose phonetic sounds. So we have anneau and chateau. They've learned these in other stories, but I like to reinforce those sounds. So we have these vocabulary cards, and the students, after they've listened to me tell the story, and I've got a PowerPoint with all those pictures, I'm retelling it sort of like a movie talk. Then the students learn the vocabulary, and they draw it. They practice with them different cards. We have a Quizlet with it. So that's all set up. Once the students feel pretty comfortable with that, then they can go on to putting the story in order. And here again, I've got the past tense verbs of the story, but when you flip it over, it has the infinitive. So the students first put the story in order with the past tense, and then they can check with me to make sure it's right. Blue cards are verbs that take être in the passé composé, and yellow are the ones that take avoir. So it kind of helps reinforce them, because in French we've got these 17 verbs plus all the reflexives that take être. Okay, so this is showing me they understand the story, plus now I can practice with them telling the story directly with the past tense. That's just all reinforcing, because they have the vocabulary and we've gone over the verbs. Which brings me back to one of our more grammar things, is I've taken the story and I made these little sheets for them, and this is actually the first time that they'll see all of this grammar pushed out to them. They can recognize it. They know how somewhat pretty well to use it. And I asked them to go through the book and find these sentences, and then to translate it into English, and then what's the infinitive, so that they remember that ER verbs change to E with an accent, that IR verbs change to I. That's a lot of good stuff. Plus, then we do the être verbs. Now, that's a one-time thing. The students are, this whole time, reading the simplified version of the story. So I created this on Publisher. I made a PDF and had my copy room printed out as a booklet. And it's basically the story in real easy fashion. I've got some pictures, I've got the sticks, and you'll notice that I used, for the different vocabulary words, it's underlined so they can look over. And when it's a past tense verb, it's already in italics for them so that they remember to look for that. Okay, so they can read through the story. It's very comprehensible. I tried to keep the words, somewhere in the cognate area, but there was a lot of new words, so I would always put pictures. And I can see that someone wrote in this book, well chosen. I used a lot of emotions, which we were seeing earlier with those cards, and past tense actions. And that's really what I'm trying to show them here, is how to create these stories with the imperfect and the past tense. And so many teachers say, well, how my students will never get the imparfait and passé composé, how they work together. And for me, I use a lot of emotion when we're telling stories. And the students, like I said, they've been doing this since second year, so it's nothing new, but now we're putting some teeth behind it. Okay, so the students have several days to prepare. So they're looking at the cards, they're practicing, they're using the Quizlet. I have the whole story, plus I do have a Google form that they fill out, just practice the actual verbs in the past tense. They are going to get a copy of the pictures. They're going to go outside. We have some practice rooms by the choir, and they're going to tell the story from memory using just the pictures and their vocabulary knowledge and their verbs. And that's how we talk about the past. So this is the last part. Since our story takes place in the Middle Ages, we spend the last 2 weeks of the unit looking at life in that time period. I have these wonderful books. A couple of them I've made photocopies of. So this Chateau Fort book I really like because it's written for level 1 children. And it has wonderful pictures. The sentences are quite easy, and it has vocabulary and helps the students understand what it was like to live in the Middle Ages, since that's one of our goals, is to compare and contrast life in the past. This is just a beautiful book that I love looking at. It's one of these flip-flap book. It is a pop-up book, I guess you would say in English. And one of my students today was going over it because he had already finished all of his work. And he was admiring this one. He goes, oh, madame, look, look, look. And so this one where it's talking about building a cathedral, which we just had Notre Dame situation in Paris. So he was looking and he goes, oh, this is my favorite part. And this is a boy who, he's so into French, it's not going to be his life, but this is what really interests him. So I always get these livres flip-flap, known as pop-up books. And they have little things that the kids can do, and it's fun. So they're learning about life, and I have one of these question-réponse type of books. I've got real basic little storybooks for kids. Okay, again, just simple language with a lot of pictures. This Moyen Âge book, I'm a big fan of Mes Petites Questions. So this is a great book for students because it, well, first of all, it has lots of questions, and then it gives good history. And what I want them to know is, what was it like to live in this time period? Because honestly, I don't think they study the Middle Ages very much in school anymore, which is too bad because it's a fun time period. These are all authentic texts, and I try and make things, activities for them that are helping them understand it more. Even the little kid books with just 1 or 2 sentences, they have always something to look at. Okay. Here we have the Tapisserie de Bayeux, which is that amazing long tapestry that you can visit that tells another story of the Middle Ages. If you don't know that story, look that one up. So this Chateau Fort book, it's got a lot of history in it, and it's a little bit more advanced for the students, but it's exactly what we're working on. So every day for about 2 weeks, we're looking at a different book. And we have some activities to talk and read and think about life in the past. To finish out this crazy month of May, and I always try and time it like this, we have the castle building experience. And I'll show you what they look like when they're done, but I like to make sure that the students have something fun to look forward to, and the cookie castles, it's it. So some of the things that we've been using, I have lots of diagram castle designs, and we have a QR code experience. I put these up all over. We have a large campus, so I put the QR codes up in 2 different buildings on 2 different levels. There's 19 of these, and these are parts of a castle. So the students will flash the code, and they have the definition. They have a really basic definition right there, and then they have their worksheet. It has the longer definitions. So they have to read the longer definition, look at the picture, and try and match those, and then they write the word right in there. Then they're going to transfer that and bring it on to this and write it. Since I don't have a perfect worksheet, maybe I'll have a student draw that. I'm using all 4 of these, and the students can write it anywhere. What I also give them is this little, well, I shouldn't say little, this wonderful presentation that I have that gives them parts of the castles. Some of these are the same pictures, but it's also some history for them to see how castle history has changed from the Motte Castral to the Château Fort to the castles, sort of like the Château de Loire, castles of the Loire. So you can see they go through this and they're looking at it. They're looking for the different places, the different parts of the architecture, and they're trying to name what they see. Like, I see this, I see that, and you can see how the castles are changing. So then we have this little talk about offensive and defensive architectural points of castles. And I ask them, yes, no type questions. What would soldiers do here? What would they use this for? And we're doing this as much as we can in French during that activity. Okay, so we go through that. Then the students are going to take their knowledge from the architecture that they've explored and the history that they've looked at, and they're going to make their cookie castles, and that's right next. One of the benefits of being in French 3 and French 4 is that we get to make the cookie castles. And so I provide them with the real basics, and then they can bring in any other candy or food that they want to add to theirs. And it takes about 2 or 3 days to go. They have to think about the construction and the materials that they want. It's a good idea of giving them some pictures so that they can see, because sometimes kids, this is really, something they've never done in another class, although in their physics class, I know that they make the toothpick bridges. So I give them this, and they get really fancy, and they're trying to make them as solid as possible. So they've got frosting, they've got marshmallows. Some of them brought in Rice Krispie treats. Sometimes there's accidents, but it's really beautiful to see what they come up with. And we have judges come. So the teachers from the family consumer science classes that usually do cupcake wars, wow, look at that one. They come in and help judge, because I don't want to be too favoritism with this. And it's just a great time. The students have so much fun, and the thing that they have to do is they have to label the parts of their castle. So they use the vocabulary that we got from those QR sheets and from the work, the vocabulary sheets, and they have to put little stickers on their castle for it to count. So that's kind of our rubric. They have a lot of fun, and every year it just gets to be kind of crazy in the room. It smells so much like sugar. And then our seniors leave us in June. So we've come to the end of this tutorial video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really find that if you start priming the pump in the levels 1 and 2, that they feel confident and probably curious enough that they want to keep going on in French 3 and French 4. Plus, when they come in as level 2 kids and they see all the castles everywhere, they start going, how come we don't do that? And I say, well, next year when you're in level 3 or 4, we'll be doing this. If you understand what I'm saying about how I support the students, you'll know that I don't want to say that this is all CI, because there are some things that maybe once in a while I push them outside of their comfort level, or I give them something that's not entirely comprehensible, and we work through it. But yet, as much as I speak and use the students, their knowledge, we're working together all the time. I find that by the end of AP, our students are able to use with pretty good accuracy the different types of past tenses, so the imperfect and the preterite, but also in French, the 3 different je suis, je me suis, and wow, there's so much to learn. As we remember, intermediate, mid to high students, that's when they start being accurate in tenses. So please don't stress that your students are getting être in the passé composé in first year. That's not what they're supposed to be doing right then. They're making lists, they're recognizing things. A little bit each year helps you get to this proficiency level that you're hoping for in the 3rd or 4th year. Now, if your students don't go on after French 2 or at level 2, and they haven't mastered the past tense, I gotta say that's probably okay, because if they're not going to continue, no, it's not okay, but of course, if they're going to be continuing their language studies, perhaps on a study abroad, maybe in college, maybe they find the love of their life, this will come to them in a different way. It's not essential that they come out of a level 2 class having memorized every past tense and every irregular verb using être, avoir, if it's got a preceding direct object pronoun. I'm going crazy now. Okay, so please be gentle with your students when you're looking at different tenses. Even people at the university level still make mistakes. Even teachers make mistakes. And if you go on the internet, please don't be shocked on how many French speakers make basic mistakes on the choice of auxiliary or the past tense agreement. It's frightening. So be gentle with your students. Enjoy. Have a lot of story built in. Have legends. Have weird things, and they'll be fine. Okay. So from my CI classroom to yours, I wish you a wonderful last month of school. If you're almost done, please don't tell me. I'll be going until June 17th and technically the 18th because teachers work until that day. And we'll see you online. À bientôt. Merci beaucoup.